Hello my friends, welcome to a new episode of Creative Talk, and we have a lot of interesting topics today. The main topic will be how to pre-visualize your artistic work and come up with an interesting idea. My name is Olivio, I'm a professional designer from Vienna, Austria, and I want to thank all of my patrons who support me and make these videos possible. Thank you very much for that. So the thing I want to start off with is that I want to give our community a name that gives us kind of a collective feeling, binds us together, makes us an actual real community. And I know I always start my videos with hello my friends, but that is kind of generic and a lot of channels do that. So I would like to find a name for us. I was thinking maybe Creative Crowd would be cool, but maybe it should be more specific to my channel. So please write something in the comments, some ideas that you have, how we could name our community, who we want to be. So the next thing is I want to thank you for your really positive feedback to the brushes I put out. They have been a lot of downloads for them, and I was really happy about this positive feedback and about your huge acceptance of my creative work. So that was really nice. And if in case you didn't know that, I will put out another pack every month. So it's not going to be brushes every time. I want to do stuff for Affinity Photo. I want to do stuff for Affinity Designer. So different kind of things, maybe LUTs or macros or presets or mock-ups. So there will be really interesting and useful packs for you. And by the way, if you're one of my patrons, you even get the premium packs depending on your tier for free, included in your rewards as a patron. So maybe look at that too. Okay. Let's go to the main topic, and that is, and this is a topic suggested by one of my patrons. He wrote, I don't pre-visualize what outcome I want for my art, and this is a problem. Can you help me with that? So this can mean two things. Is it the pre-visualization of a specific work or of your artistic journey over a longer time? So I want to go in into both of these topics today. And to have a little quote here, Ansel Adams says, you don't take a photo, you make it. So that's a really interesting part, because each photo is a choice that you take from the perspective, from the camera settings, from what is in your picture, from the time of day. You make the photograph your own by your own choice. So there is a process in that. And even especially when you create a composition afterwards in post in your program like Affinity Photo, you have to do even more choices. And it's always hard to come up with these choices. And for a lot of people, even if they're experienced and have years and years of creative history on their backs, it's really scary to have this kind of empty canvas in front of you, and now you need to come up with an idea. So today I will show you some really easy techniques how to do that. And the first thing I want to suggest to you is what I call the first flush, like you would do with tea. So sit down for 5 minutes and think about the idea. First of all, come up with an idea, something that interests you, and then think about that. And what comes to your mind? All these kind of concepts. After 5 minutes, sit down for 5 minutes and write them all out on a paper like a brainstorming. And what you do now with that brainstorming is you take the paper and then you set it aside. And that's really important, because these first ideas that you just had, those are the most obvious things. Those are the things that are probably not going to impress a lot of people. They are too obvious, too easy, too blam, not that good. So don't throw it away, just set it aside, because we are cycling back to that paper at the end. In between, now starts the really interesting part, and that's going to be the research, and that's really cool. And another quote here from Thomas Morton, I have to read the quote real quick. Art enables us to find ourselves and lose ourselves at the same time. And that's really true, and this is what you can do through research. So one thing, and that's the easiest approach to research that I would do, is go online and find different sources. So research, for example, on Google Images, but also, and what I like really as a source is Pinterest. And you can search about these different concepts, and you can make an on board and pin these different concepts, because what you want to have is a big board with a lot of different ideas. And you might say, now if I do that, I fear that my own creative voice is going to be flushed away by this avalanche of creative solutions by others, and maybe I fall into the pit where I do the exact same thing as they do, and my creative individual voice and path is lost in this kind of deep sea of pre-created fast food solutions. And that's a fear. That's a true thing that can happen, but you can also stay away from that. And the argument I would give you for that is, the good thing is that now you have a bird's eye view over what other people have done. You can see the repetitions, you can see what people have done a lot, in which way, from the composition, from the moods, from the colors, from the feelings, from the gestures, everything. And when you look at all of this, you can find some things where you say, oh, okay, but this thing, they never did it in that way. They never tried this kind of thing. They never did this kind of setting or this kind of mood. So you can find something that's actually new, and you can base it on actually knowing that this is kind of new, or at least not done to death by a lot of other people. So this is giving you the possibility to even be different, because you can only be different if you know the norm, if you know the average, if you know what other people have done so far. So I think this is still an important part. And of course, it will also train you to develop your own voice by knowing how to differentiate yourself. So I wouldn't say you get flushed away, or try to stay away from getting flushed away. Try to stay away from copying that, and instead come up with your own variation of that. And it doesn't have to be super different. Just try to give it your own spin. That's already enough. Okay, the next thing you can do, and what I suggest to you, is go out into the real life and look at what other people are doing. Not in a creepy way, of course, like don't walk up to people and look at them from 2 meters. Just sit down in a park or in a museum or in a cafe and watch people at the other side of the room. What are their clothings? What are they doing? What things did they bring with them? What are their habits? How do they interact with each other? Stuff like that will give you a lot of insights. And if it's not people your artwork is about, you can look at different objects or plants or animals and see how they behave, what they do, all these kind of things. And of course, you can always find experts to talk with. For example, you can always go into a museum, for example, about natural history, and ask about the development and habits and all these kind of things about a specific animal that's interesting for you. Okay, and these kind of things will give you a lot of interesting insights and details and special habits of people. For example, a special habit of mine is when I go to a museum with classic arts, with paintings, I bring binoculars. And this might be a bit strange because you're standing in front of a picture, you can see everything quite well. But what a binocular enables you to do is, first of all, in museums often you have really huge paintings, so details might be high up and you can't see them real good. The other thing is that you can focus in on a very small part. So with the binoculars, I often found things and realized things in paintings I wouldn't have seen otherwise, because I'm overwhelmed by the rest of the painting and all these details in there. So focusing in with the binoculars is kind of an interesting thing. And if you watch me, you maybe came up with an idea for photo work where a kind of strange guy is standing in a museum and watching a small painting with a binocular from 2 meters away. That's an interesting work. Okay, let's go on. Let's go on to the next part, and that is history. History and culture is really interesting, because not only did our society change over the centuries, but there is a lot of other societies around the planet that found their own solutions to the same problems. And not only did they do that, they also had different philosophical and cultural and religious backgrounds for these kind of solutions. So to look into these kind of ways and how they developed and why they developed gives you a lot of information and background to understand why different things are shaped in a certain way, why different people have different habits in a certain way, and what they mean to them. And this can influence the way you build up the concept for your artistic work and for your artistic idea. And of course, it makes it a lot easier. And you see now the process that I'm suggesting is get rid of your fear by actually understanding what is going on. And the more you know about something, the less fearful and and alien it is to you, and the more well-known, and it feels like home at a certain time. And this process is really fun and interesting and inspirational, and you will find so much more interesting things than we had in this list at the beginning. Let me look at my list, by the way. Okay, there is one more thing I want to suggest to you, and that is, if you have a printer at home, go into your graphics program and take a normal paper size from your printer, and then make 4 boxes on the paper and print that out maybe 50 times, okay? And now that you have these boxes, you can, in each of these boxes, paint a little scene of what you think would be interesting as the content of your photo. Or your artistic work. And it doesn't have to be an elaborate sketch that is realistic and all kind of things. You can take stick figures and make a really easy drawing, and you can write text to explain what the different parts are and what kind of colors you imagine there. The cool thing is you have 4 boxes on one page. So that means when you draw out 10 pages, you have 40 variations of the same content, and you will come up with ideas and interesting concepts and interesting solutions, especially through the manual process of drawing them out and being involved in this kind of process, which is very different from just looking at different ideas on Pinterest or the internet. So that's a really cool way to go about that. And then you can spread them out on the ground, at the wall, wherever you have space, and look at the different variations. You can compare them. That's always interesting to have this kind of bird's eye view, and then you can pick the most interesting parts and create your actual work, combine it with your research. And now we can circle back to the page that we've written at the beginning, because these are the most obvious things. And I think a good way to go about art is to have the entry level of having something that is really obvious and people understand at the first look, and then go over to the inspiring part where you lead people on the way out. They find something that's inspirational, interesting, a new perspective, a new spin, a new kind of way to look at things. So you can draw people in and then inspire them along the path. That's an interesting thing. You can, of course, also be super abstract, so nobody's understanding your work, but then probably nobody's looking at your work either. So find a way in the middle. That's good. Okay. Now let's talk about the creative process. How do I find my voice? And I know everybody wants to find their voice, and we want to have it at the very beginning. We want to imagine ourselves sitting down, giving an interview, being on, I don't know, late night show or whatever, and say, yes, I'm famous now. But don't rush that. Don't force that. Don't have it too early, or don't think you have found it too early, because as an artist, the most important part, and this sounds really, I don't know, cheesy, is the journey. The journey is more important, and the reason for that is when you start out, you have a certain idea of who you want to be as an artist, but when you reach that point a certain time later, you look back and you find that this point was actually kind of childish, and you understand now that you didn't have enough experience and skill and knowledge about it to really make any decisions where you want to go. And at that point, so many more doors have opened up, opportunities, ideas, concepts, all these kind of things, that you have other ideas where you want to go, and you have a new plan what you want to reach. And when you reach that plan, it has changed again. So don't be too over obsessed with finding your own voice. And I talk from experience, because I went a lot of different paths and I failed a lot of different times, and it's always something where you learn from that experience, and you also learn to understand yourself. So that's important. And it's kind of okay, it's kind of important to stick to something, because everything, no matter how little it is, takes a tremendous amount of time and energy if you want to build it up to something that has actually meaning, and it's not just a one-time thing. So if you want this to make your life, and I know there's all these videos out there, train your abs for 5 minutes a day and read this book for 5 minutes a day, and then you will not only be a millionaire, you will also have super abs, and you will get like 200 years old. this is not how it works. It takes time, it takes experience, you make a lot of failures along the way, but all of that is okay in the end if you find something that fits to you. So, and this is something I would suggest, instead of finding your artistic voice, try to find your own speed and try to find your own pacing of what feels comfortable for you. For example, for me, and this is something a friend of mine criticizes a lot about me, he says, Olivio, you always want to find the fast solution. You always want to go in there and do that and wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and then you go on to the next work. And that's true, that's true. He is the complete opposite. What he is doing is he's sitting down 15 years painting almost like the same kind of art, and evolving very slowly, making very small changes on purpose because he don't wants to rush it. He wants to evolve and really build it up in a very senseful and slow and purposeful way. And that is super great. And I really admire him for being able to do that. But I know it's not me. I'm not that guy who has one string, one line where I go down and say, okay, this is the one thing I want to do. I have a lot of lines I want to go down. And rather, I know a lot of things about a lot of things than being the super expert in just one thing, because this is just me. And it works in my mind because I have the philosophy that I say, for me, it feels more authentic, more natural and real when I say that I take all this experience because I looked from the bird's eye view about on all these kind of different topics, the culture, the religion, the politics, the history, all these kind of things, the different art mediums. And then I take all this knowledge, and the artistic process is just a little creative small explosion where I do one thing and then I move on to another thing that's maybe a completely different style. It's maybe even a different kind of art. And I concentrate like a little spring where all the flowers come at the same time and then they are gone for another 3/4 of the year. I see it like this spontaneous, creative, explosive process. That for me is creating art, and the rest of it is just thinking about it, coming up with ideas, being in this kind of state of research and just enjoying life and the world and the things that have evolved in our different societies and levels of culture that surround us. I find that much more interesting than being focused on just one thing. And I'm not saying that the thing the way you're super focused is bad. I'm saying this is super, super great that you can be focused, but it's just not me. And that's okay. And it's really important that you find this kind of own way that you do things. Okay, that was the video for today. Thank you very much for watching. I will leave you now to create your own things. I hope this helped a little bit to find your own path, to find your own journey. See you in the next video. Thank you very much. Bye.